When you hear the word Seattle Supersonics, what comes to mind? Maybe it's Sean Kemp, the Rain Man, or Gary Payton, the Glove, or maybe an image of a tall and skinny 19-year-old rookie, Kevin Durant. For fans in Seattle, it's something else. It's tragedy, it's theft, an iconic team with an incredible fan base that packed its bags and shipped off for Oklahoma City. From Spotify and The Ringer, I'm Jordan Ritter-Kahn, and in my podcast, Sonic Boom, I talk to players, politicians, owners, and fans about how Seattle lost the Sonics. You can listen to it on the Book of Basketball feed, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Emergency pod time. Sheil Kapadia here on the Ringer NFL show, joined by Deonte Lee and Steven Ruiz. We are working on a divisional preview episode, and then we check our Slack messages, and there it is. Our long national nightmare is over. Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler. I don't know who reported it first because it just happened. I'm looking at NFL Network, and Ian Rappaport says Aaron Rodgers plans to sign with the Steelers. It will be a 1-year deal. At long last, the 4-time MVP lands in his best spot. Okay, I don't know if I agree with the editorializing there, but we can bat it around. Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers, speculated for a long time. I think everybody assumed it was going to happen at some point. It finally does happen. There are a few ways to discuss this, Ruiz, but first, just give me your sort of general reaction on Aaron Rodgers playing for Mike Tomlin next year.
I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch how those two kind of clash. Obviously, we've seen, Mike Tomlin, I think, prefers guys to kind of keep things in-house. And we've seen Aaron Rodgers be a guy that does not want to keep things in-house, and as long as it suits his narrative. But from a football perspective, I think it's the best quarterback they've had in the past couple of years since Ben Roethlisberger officially lost it. And I would say 2020 was probably the year. I mean, if you're them, I think it was the best option they had realistically to gain a quarterback who can get them over the hump and maybe win a playoff game this time. But it comes down to how good the infrastructure is going to be around him. Because I think the one thing we could say for sure is that Aaron Rodgers no longer has that I can extend the play, make things happen outside of the pocket, and I'm a dangerous threat to the defense. I just don't think he's there anymore. He's a guy that has to be in the pocket to get the most out of him. So unless the Steelers can cultivate an offensive environment where you're not asking Aaron Rodgers to be a playmaker, I think it's going to go bad. But I think if they are able to cultivate that and get a good running game going, then I think we could see an efficient version of Aaron Rodgers if it's not the former, top 10 MVP candidate version of him.
All right. A little bit of a bullish perspective there from Ruiz. Diante, do you agree with him, or are you on the other side of this?
I think that for me, what Steven has been painting really over the offseason in terms of ceiling is all fair. It just feels so hard to envision him accessing that on a week-by-week basis based off what we got in New York. And I think that the most fair or the median outcome is a quarterback that is more dependent upon his offensive infrastructure than the offensive infrastructure is reliant upon his individual play. And I think that the landing spot then becomes a real point of conversation. And I just look at what Pittsburgh has been over the last couple of seasons, and specifically last year under Arthur Smith. I don't know what this offensive infrastructure is going to look like when you drop an Aaron Rodgers in, because so much of projecting out positive results is going to be based upon Aaron Rodgers doing what he did very begrudgingly with Matt LaFleur, where he wanted to play a very particular way, but Matt LaFleur had enough, kind of cachet in the building, being the new hired head coach, to say, hey, if you do it this way, I promise you will be an effective quarterback. And he ends up winning back-to-back MVPs. That's not going to happen here. I mean, he's just not the same quarterback now than he was towards the tail end in Green Bay. And I don't know if Arthur Smith has a cachet offensively to say that, hey, we're just going to run play action. Your job is to fake the handoff, throw the ball to the tight end out in the flat, and take 4.5 yards. That's all I'm asking you to do on this play. I think that there's going to be a little bit of friction maybe it gets worked out because I think that this signing is earlier than I anticipated. I didn't think that he was going to show up in Pittsburgh until like midway through training camp, because that's just kind of how Aaron Rodgers has a reputation of operating on his own schedule. But I do think that him getting there early enough, maybe he does get acclimated. And at the very least, he's got a vertical receiver in DK Metcalf. And maybe there's just enough there with pushing the ball downfield and avoiding negative plays in a way that's not necessarily harmful or detrimental to the flow of the offense will be enough for them to keep their head above water.
I don't see it. I think this is going to be a disaster. I think this is what is going to cause Mike Tomlin to have his first losing record as an NFL head coach. I understand why they did it. You guys made the points. What are the options out there? All those things. It's a 1-year deal. He doesn't have to be Superman. He needs to kind of be an average quarterback, and you hope your defense is good enough. He is 42 years old. I mean, that last MVP season was 4 years ago. There's just not a precedent other than in the non-Tom Brady division of a quarterback even starting, 12 games at this age. It doesn't happen for a reason here. And I think their offensive line has some potential where you say, okay, that could be a solid group if some of these young players take steps forward, although they are, they're young players and we don't know that they're going to take steps forward. But the supporting cast, I mean, let me ask you this, Ruiz, is it a better supporting cast than he had with the Jets last year when you look at it? Because I'm looking at the depth chart. I mean, DK Metcalf, and then the other receivers here are Calvin Austin, Robert Woods, Roman Wilson. You see what you get from him there. Pat Freiermuth at tight end, Jalen Warren at running back. Like I think the offensive line, I guess, should be better than he had with the Jets. I don't think that the pass catching group is really better than he had with the Jets.
No, it's definitely not better. I don't think the skill group is better, but I think the offensive line is the more important piece for a quarterback who can't really move anymore, and those days are behind him. I think the offensive play caller is definitely better compared to Nathaniel Hackett and what they replaced him with. Like, I think
that's the tough one, though. Like Diante said, I mean, we've had this conversation a bunch, but we just don't know. Is Rodgers going to come in there at 42 years old and say, "All right, Arthur, what are we running?" Or how is that going to work? Maybe he has respect for him and is like, "Yeah, let's get back to that and let's be a meshing of our minds." But there's also the chance he just goes in there stubborn and is like, "This is my last season. This is what we're doing, Arthur."
That's definitely on the table, but I'm more inclined to take the more optimistic view just because Arthur Smith did spend time coaching under Matt LaFleur, and there is some similarities there. I think there's, it's not like he's presenting this new offense and being like, "Just trust me, bro, on this." I think there's already some built-in buy-in from Rodgers with this offense. He won 2 MVPs in a similar style, so that's the only reason I have a little bit more optimism. But I just don't think, like, if they're signing him expecting to get a top 5 quarterback or whatever, Aaron Rodgers, like whatever the ceiling is, I think that's naive. But I'm just comparing it to the standard that's been there at quarterback the past couple of years, and it's by far the best quarterback they've had for me. Like, I don't think a washed Russell Wilson doesn't even compare to a washed Aaron Rodgers, Kenny Pickett, like enough said with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, all these guys, like even 2020 Ben Roethlisberger, 2021 Ben Roethlisberger isn't close to what we even saw out of Aaron Rodgers down the stretch last year. So that's where my optimism comes from. But like this division, it doesn't matter. That's the thing. Like, it's not closing the gap between them and the Bengals and them and the Ravens, especially not the Ravens. So I don't know if they make the playoffs because of this. I don't think like the record changes significantly, but I think it might be a more watchable offense than we've seen in the past. And then we also can't discount the fact that the defense kind of fell apart towards the end of the season last year.
Yes. Thank you. I feel like that gets forgotten.
There's more to this than just Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm with you. Quarterback situation was bad, but that defense was terrible down the stretch. They couldn't do anything against a good team. They looked lifeless. There were weird comments made to the media, sort of finger pointing without naming names there. And Mike Tomlin has been an unbelievable head coach for a long time, but he couldn't do anything to fix those issues and resolve those issues. So like those teams with Duck Hodges and the other guys, they didn't have to do as much, obviously, offensively. And I just wonder if this team is actually set up to be the Steelers teams that we know that, hey, they're going to win with defense and special teams and QB just do enough. Like that's a question mark based on, now they do still have some talent on defense, but they kind of have to get back to that. Let me ask you this. Deonte, what does success look like? If we just look back at this after the season's over and we say, okay, they achieved X, or if they're in the Steelers building right now and saying, hey, this would be a successful season from Aaron Rodgers, how do you define that at this stage of his career, given where the franchise is?
It's so funny because I think it would be different if he was coming back to New York. My expectations would be different, but this is so interwoven now in the story of Mike Tomlin that the only way I can really paint this as a definitive objective success is if he leads them to win a playoff game. They've got to win a playoff game. You don't have to win the AFC North because, this is tough a division as there is in football. They don't have to be a 12-win football team, but you have to get to the postseason, and Aaron Rodgers has to be what this slew of quarterbacks that has been in and out since Ben Roethlisberger retired has not, which is a playoff-winning guy, because that clearly has been the limiting factor for them. I think that everybody in that building recognizes that that's been the limiting factor for them. And that's what he's going to have to change about this franchise in order for me to feel like Mike Tomlin made the right move, that Omar Khan's GM made the right move, that this franchise mortgaging so much of this phase that they've been in of trying to maximize their window. It's only worth it if a quarterback like this gets you over the hump. Anything short of that, I'd have a really hard time seeing why this franchise should continue to operate the way it's been operating. I will say that much.
Is that where you're at, Ruiz? Got to win a playoff game for this to be a success, or do you have the bar a little bit lower?
I think it depends on what the defense looks like. If the defense is like middle of the pack and they make the playoffs, I think it's a win just because it flips the narrative. Like it's not the defense carrying them to another playoff. It's the offense doing most of the heavy lifting. I don't know how likely that is. And I think if Aaron Rodgers plays well individually, I think maybe you can chalk it up as a win, even if there's not team success. But if their aspirations are any higher than that, then I think this is bound to be a failure. I don't see how this is much of a ceiling raiser at all. I think it's a floor raiser, if anything.
Yeah, I think if they make the playoffs, they'll be pretty happy about it. I think if he just performs like the, let's say, 16th best quarterback in the NFL statistically or something like that, where it feels like, all right, you're getting something from that position that you haven't gotten. I think they can look at that and say, all right, it was worth it. It's a 1-year deal. We didn't give up draft capital there. So I think something like that. But you're right. The different things are tied to it. I mean, if the defense isn't as good and now he's performing like the 20th best quarterback, then where does that really get you? Your draft pick's going to be worse next year. I know there's no tanking in the NFL, but just kind of zooming out to where they've been here at the quarterback position, having to try to figure it out year after year after year, and just like the team's too good for them to be bad enough to take a big swing on a quarterback, and the timing hasn't set up. So I'm not telling you there was another option that was great for them, but it just kind of extends this sort of weird window they're in, I think.
I think just looking at the football is the only way to really feel optimistic about this move, to be honest. I think the potential for disaster just with off the field stuff. You can count it as a success if there's no headline on Fox News in October that has Aaron Rodgers in it, If there's no controversial Pat McAfee interview, that's a success. But from a football perspective, even then, him playing 12 games might be chalked up as a success. He's, you said, he's right in his 40s. There's no guarantee, even if he is good, there's no guarantee he's going to play 18 games, 17 games or whatever. I'm trying to think of what he was good at last year and how that's going to look in the Steelers offense. And I think that's the one concern I have from a football standpoint is he was really good at quick game. That's where he still seemed to have his juice as a quarterback. That's where he still was a top 10 quarterback. But outside of that, the deeper you got into snaps, the worse he got. And it's hard to separate that from offensive line play. It just is. It's hard to be able to watch the film and be oh, that quarterback has 0.2 seconds less than the other quarterbacks do on average. You can't really see that. So I do wonder how this better offensive line is going to make his game look. And I think maybe we could see him show a lot of improvement from where he was last year. And then you get to the question of is the rest of the team around him good enough to actually take advantage of that? And it's just
matter.
It's really hard to answer that with an optimistic answer.
Yeah. 24th in EPA per pass play last year, 25th in success rate. To Ruiz's point, though, maybe if the offensive line is better, maybe there's some upside there. But then again, there's the trade-off. But I mean, man, if the DK Metcalf goes down, Yikes. I don't know what that supporting cast really looks like unless one of these unknown guys steps up and really plays well. So I just don't know about the situation. I don't know about the experiment with Tomlin. I mean, Ruiz has pointed out before that, hey, Ben Roethlisberger had a radio show back in the day. Tomlin's used to dealing with stuff. He can deal with stuff. He doesn't shy away from it. He had Antonio Brown on his roster for a long time. So maybe he knows what comes and he has a plan for dealing with it. It's not like he says you can't do any of that stuff, but it just feels like a very interesting mix there with a Mike Tomlin team and Aaron Rodgers. All right, let's end by just going on we can change these in August. This is what we do in June. We go on the record with some predictions that we can change a couple months from now, just on how you think this thing plays out. I can start since I already said it. I think they are just a middling, underwhelming. They feel more entertaining now, but by the time we get to November 1, we're like, no one wants to watch this Steelers team. They're just an average team with no upside. It kind of comes crumbling down a little bit at the end. I'm not saying they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, but they're like a 7-win team. Rodgers retires at the end of the season, maybe late into the offseason, waiting for a slow news period. I don't know. The Steelers have to figure out another quarterback solution next offseason. They might have to come up with solutions for some of these older players on defense, and they're kind of back to where they started. And the Tomlin streak, an incredible streak. I don't care it's been a long time since he's won a playoff game. Just to not have that losing record has been incredible. I think this is the year and now I have predicted this before and it's been wrong many times. So let's just say that. But I feel like Rodgers is the push I need to just, hey, try it again, Sheil. So I'm trying it again. He finally finishes with the losing record. So that's my prediction. Diante, what's your prediction for how this plays out?
I think that this team, I think the saddest prediction is the most realistic one, which is that they go 9-8 and they're the 8th seed. They're ranked 8th in the AFC and they just miss out on making the postseason. I think that that's the most realistic and probably the most depressing outcome from all of this, is that they're just good enough to be in the picture, and the picture is not changed at all from last season or the last 5 seasons to this year. And ultimately the AFC is too competitive and boxes them out.
Yeah, I think we're going to follow a similar script that we've followed in Pittsburgh for the last couple of years, where they start off with a great record and then kind of tail off after. Like, everyone has questions about the how real it is, and then they get tougher competition in the second half and they tail off. But like, there's a chance for some narratives to come out of these first 3 weeks. I mean, they have the Jets, which, by the way, NFL schedule makers always ahead of the curve. Jets in week 1. That's beautiful. The Jets, they have the Seahawks at home, 1:00 game for a West Coast team. They have the Patriots on the road, very winnable game. This could be a 3-0 start if the defense is back to where it was when, at their best. And they're going into that Minnesota game in week 4, and we're wondering, it's a primetime game. And we're wondering, actually, I think it's a London game, but we're wondering if this is like a real team. And that's the discourse throughout the week is, can they compete with a team like the Vikings? But I do think they have a good record because the schedule is very forgiving over the first couple of months. But then after that, down the stretch, Bills, Ravens twice, Lions, at the Lions. The Dolphins could be a better team. Obviously, they play the Bengals in the second half, to play at the Chargers. So I think we could see a hot start, and then it just fizzles out. And I think once it starts fizzling, once that train goes down the track, I think it's going to be hard to stop the negative momentum.
So a little bit like last year, maybe.
100%. Like the last 10 years, honestly.
Yeah. I didn't realize that's who they start with the first 3 weeks. So yeah, they'll probably be favored, I would think, in those 3 games. Overall, though, they have the 10th hardest schedule in the NFL. So to Ruiz's point, it gets a lot tougher there down the stretch. So Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. We can finally find a resolution there. We'll see how it all plays out. I think I think there'll be moments of entertainment, to Ruiz's point early on. I think it'll get pretty old pretty fast, where it'll be like, no, I'd rather watch Jaden Daniels, than watch Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. It's not that interesting anymore to me once we get to November, like I said earlier. All right, nothing like a little emergency pod the first week of June. There you go. Thanks to Christopher Sutton for producing, Kiera Givens on social, and of course, thanks to Deonte Lee and Stephen Ruiz. I'm Sheil Kapadia. We'll talk to you next time on the Ringer NFL Show. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.